During the summer of 1944, the world was gripped by the events of D-Day. It was a monumental effort involving meticulous planning and unrelenting determination to liberate Europe. Amid the chaos of battle, as soldiers fought to secure the beachheads and push back German forces, a curious problem emerged. The troops were running low on beer. To the British soldier, beer was more than just a beverage. It was a symbol of home, a connection to their lives before the war, and a means of unwinding after the intense stress of combat. Yet, in the days following D-Day, beer was nowhere to be found in Normandy. Local cafes near the beachheads only offered cider, which was described by one British soldier as pretty watery stuff. The soldiers' longing for beer did not go unnoticed. On June 20th, 1944, just a couple of weeks after the landings, a Reuters correspondent reported on this predicament to the British newspapers. The story highlighted the lack of beer for troops and recounted a private ordering a pint of his beloved mild and bitter, only to be handed a glass of cider instead. It was clear that something had to be done. The Supermarine Spitfire, a legendary fighter plane synonymous with the Battle of Britain, one of the most famous and recognisable aircraft of the Second World War. It was loved by its pilots for its agility and responsiveness. Whilst its primary role was air superiority, the versatility of its design allowed later variants to carry bombs and rockets carried on pylons under its wings. Although not as suited to ground attack as other aircraft such as the Hawker Typhoon, the Spitfire played its part in supporting ground forces during the Normandy invasion, targeting enemy fortifications, vehicles and supply lines. But its mission set would expand again, taking on a role that its designers had likely never considered. It would become a flying brewer's dray, delivering beer to soldiers on the front lines. The solution lay in the Spitfire's jettison tanks, which were normally used to carry additional fuel. These tanks were essential for extending the aircraft's operational range. However, in this instance, they were steam cleaned and repurposed to carry something far more refreshing: beer. These modified tanks were given the official designation of Mod XXX. The beer runs began shortly after D-Day, with the first recorded delivery occurring on June 13, 1944, just a week after the landings. Flight Lieutenant Lloyd Berryman of the Royal Canadian Air Force was tasked by his commanding officer, Wing Commander Keith Hudson, with delivering a shipment of beer to the newly established B4 airstrip at Beny-sur-Mer. The fuel tanks were steam cleaned and filled with beer from the Henty and Constable Brewery. Taking off from Tangmere, the flight of 3 Spitfires flew south to the hastily constructed airstrip in Normandy, located just 3 miles from the landing beaches. Flying over the English Channel at 13,000 feet ensured the beer was perfectly chilled. As they approached the Normandy coastline, the pilots began their descent to 5,000 feet. Below, they caught sight of HMS Rodney, unleashing relentless salvos to weaken the German defences near Caen. A few miles south lay their destination. The pilots landed smoothly and taxied to a stop at the end of the airstrip. Strangely, the area was eerily quiet. There wasn't a soul in sight. The deserted surroundings left them puzzled, unsure of what to do next. After a tense moment, Berryman's sharp eyes spotted a soldier cautiously peeking out from behind a tree. Waving, he signalled for the soldier to approach the plane. Climbing up onto the Spitfire's wing, the soldier asked him, "What the hell are you doing here?" Berryman quickly explained. "Look," he said, "can you see that church steeple at the far end of the strip? Well, it's loaded with German snipers, and we've been all day trying to clear them out. So you better drop your tanks and bugger off before it's too late." Heeding the soldier's warning, Berryman didn't waste any time, and with drop tanks removed, they were soon headed back to Tangmere. As Berryman later recalled, such was the welcome of our first Spitfires into Beny-sur-Mer. A few days later, on June 17th, a Spitfire from 416 Squadron of the Royal Canadian Air Force delivered another batch of beer to a newly constructed airstrip near Gold Beach. This time, however, the beer had absorbed the residual taste of fuel from the jettison tanks, making it completely undrinkable. But this setback was quickly addressed. Thorough cleaning procedures were implemented for future deliveries, and the drop tanks were sent to factories to be lined with a food-safe coating to prevent any metallic taste from spoiling the beer. These lessons learned ensured the troops would soon enjoy their deliveries as intended. The Spitfire Mark IX was equipped with pylons which allowed it to carry bombs and rockets. However, it wasn't long before inventive minds realised these pylons could be modified to carry beer casks instead. Pilots from the Polish 131 fighter wing proudly claimed credit for inventing the beer bomb, which featured homemade nose cones fitted to the barrels to improve aerodynamics. Using beer casks offered several advantages. Unlike fuel tanks, they didn't impart a metallic taste, and they avoided the risk of contaminating aviation fuel with any leftover beer. These flying pub missions became a beloved morale booster, but they were not without their perils. Many pilots dreaded the task, not because of the flight, but due to the immense pressure. A bad landing that damaged the precious cargo could earn a pilot the dubious honour of being the most despised man in the squadron. Before long, other aircraft joined the beer delivery effort. The Hawker Typhoon, renowned for its capacity to carry heavier loads, became a key player in these morale-boosting missions. Pilots from the RAF's 123 wing, stationed at Martigny, made routine trips back to Shoreham in England, where local breweries filled their underwing drop tanks with mild and bitter. Group Captain Desmond Scott, a New Zealand-born RAF ace and the commander of 123 wing, later reminisced about these unique missions. While the beer sometimes picked up a metallic tang from the tanks, it didn't deter the eager soldiers who wasted no time in filling their enamel mugs. To satisfy the ever-growing demand, extra bottles of beer were crammed into any available space on the aircraft, ammo boxes, wing compartments, and even luggage bays, ensuring the troops received their much-anticipated liquid morale. A few days after D-Day, Wing Commander Johnny Johnson, a celebrated RAF ace, and his 127 wing touched down at the B-3 airstrip near Saint-Croix-sur-Mer. Weary from relentless combat and surviving on canned rations, Johnson reached out to Arthur King, the landlord of his favourite pub, the Unicorn in Chichester. Known as a gathering spot for RAF pilots flying out of Tangmere during the Battle of Britain, the Unicorn offered a warm refuge. Its upstairs bar, famously called the Heroes Bar, was adorned with signed photos of RAF aces. In response to Johnson's call, King arranged for fresh supplies, including tomatoes, lobsters and stout, to be flown to Normandy daily aboard Avro Ansons departing from Tangmere. These deliveries provided a warm taste of home for the troops. However, the operation drew unwanted attention after a newspaper article highlighted King's efforts. Customs and excise officials intervened, informing him that an export license was required if he was to continue. The beer runs continued throughout the summer of 1944, evolving into a more formalised operation. Recognising the importance of beer for troop morale, the British government took steps to ensure every soldier received a pint. By November, these deliveries had transitioned into organised supply chains, with the government allocating 5% of the nation's beer production to troops overseas. To meet the demand, breweries focused on crafting robust, export-friendly beers capable of withstanding the rigours of transportation and storage. However, this wartime priority came at a cost to the civilian population in Britain. With many brewery workers conscripted and production heavily constrained, beer shortages became commonplace. Pubs were forced to ration their supply, only opening for a few hours a day. This scarcity of beer led to what the Nottingham Post described as panic drinking, with patrons downing pints as quickly as possible to ensure they didn't miss out. In many areas, only mild ale remained available, as stronger bitters, better suited for long-term storage, were reserved for the front lines. Despite these challenges, the public largely supported the effort, understanding that their sacrifice helped sustain the spirits of loved ones fighting abroad. As the war advanced and Allied forces pushed deeper into Europe, beer became easier to obtain through conventional supply lines and the breweries of liberated France. Yet the legend of the flying pubs endured, and for the soldiers who received those precious pints, The distinctive roar of a Merlin engine overhead wasn't just a sound of victory, it was the promise of a cold beer and a fleeting moment of respite amid the chaos of war. Already an enduring symbol of British resilience and innovation, the Spitfire took on an unexpected role in the war effort, and in doing so became synonymous with another cherished British institution, the local pub. Thank you so much for watching. I've got a few more videos here about aviation in the Second World War. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, as it would really help me grow the channel.